Happy 2025, everybody. It's a new year and a new episode of The Rundown. This week, we're going to be talking about the latest news, including the honey scam, and also what are our New Year's resolutions and how can technology perhaps help us keep those resolutions to ourselves and others. Welcome to The Rundown. So the bad part of doing a production like this and me being able to see all the people in behind the scenes with me is that when they're dancing and looking like idiots, I see that and and it makes it very difficult to focus. But nonetheless, I'm thrilled that they're here. So help me say hello to Tamara. Hi, Tamara. How are you?
I am good. Happy to be one of your dancing idiots.
You are. Wait, no. That sounds so much
dancing
worse.
Experts.
That sounds so much worse than when I said it in my head.
I love that.
Yeah, my dancing expert, and that mysterious voice you heard behind the scenes was Dave Troutman. How are you, Dave?
Dave, the Woolly Master dancer. Yes,
the Woolly Master. I love that.
Woolly Master.
Woolly. What is Woolly?
It's a philosophy of the Far East.
How am I supposed to know that, Dave?
Yeah, well, you got to read the book about the Woolly Master.
Read a book, David. Read a book.
Yeah, read a book maybe.
Dear
Try
Lord.
old school. You know those things that don't need a battery.
Speaking of
stuff like
speaking of the Far East, he's not really Far East at all. He's just far away from me.
Farther east.
Leo Mindell.
Farther east, yeah.
Hey, Leo.
Hi there, David. Hi there. Yeah, people of the book should read a book. Is that what we're being told?
People of the book should read a book. Get a book.
There we go.
Fantastic. So how are all of you? Everyone's good so far?
Real good.
Yeah, very good.
Fantabulous. So let's not waste any time. What do you say we jump right into the news? So we have a few.
I wanted to say no.
What'd you say?
You didn't get me a chance to answer.
Sorry. No, this is not a democracy. So foldable iPhones. First of all, just real quick, how many of us would buy a foldable iPhone? What?
I don't know. Yeah.
Really?
Would I buy? I mean, I've seen the foldable Samsungs. I think are really nice. Actually, the use of being able to go that when you need to flip over to see the bigger screen. In fact, the funny thing is, I was talking off screen earlier about, unfortunately, my father passed away last month. And in some of his stuff, I found his Nokia communicator. I don't know if you ever remember the communicator. So it folded open.
With the keyboard underneath, right?
With a big keyboard.
Yeah.
But it was a great device at the time.
Yeah.
Well, here's why I won't buy one. And I'm going to date myself. My second phone was the Motorola StarTAC, which was the phone every executive had at every place that you ever went.
Was that the one with the antenna that pulled up?
It popped up like this, and then it flipped open like a compact.
Yeah.
It also, every time I pulled it out, went flying across the room.
Well, now wait a second. You're assuming this will be a little tiny thing. So the story.
Even if it was a big thing, I'm assuming I am a klutz.
Okay, fair enough. So Gurman is saying that for all of us klutzes out there, that Apple is actually considering. Now, Apple, we should note, by the way, is really the last to go into the foldable sort of area. They are starting with, according to him, a foldable iPad. A giant iPad that unfolds into the size of two iPad Pros side by side. 2028. I don't know. I don't get that. I don't even really get the iPad, to be honest with you.
Carrying a Wacom tablet in your pocket, right?
Well, no.
Yeah, but let's.
And
the one thing that's always
go ahead
lost me at the moment. How many times as a MacBook user have you gone and tried to swipe that keyboard to the screen?
Not that often.
If you're close enough to it, your brain naturally goes, why can't, and you go, I can't.
No,
can't.
you know
And
what? I think it does.
And then you compare it.
No, I think it does for younger people. I think you're absolutely right. I think I'm old enough
Yep.
that I don't expect it. And so that doesn't happen to me.
Okay.
I don't either, but I have seen that when the image on the browser or whatever they're using looks very similar to an iPad interface,
Yep.
your brain just goes there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that Apple's biggest challenge here is going to be to remove that crease, which everyone has been unable to do.
Right.
I also think getting this to a relatively reasonable consumer price is going to be a huge challenge. The iPad, he says, comes first, and then maybe next we would get the iPad. It says here, let's see, a document alleging to show Apple's display plans was posted on X last week. Indicated the iPhone maker aims to use an 18.8-inch foldable screen between 2028 and 2030. Excuse me. The MacBook Pro, he says, will switch to OLED screens in 26, with the MacBook Air following in 27. And then, where does he write about the iPhone? You can imagine a scenario one day when the ultimate Apple fans are wearing the watch and glasses, have an iPhone in their pocket, a Mac on their desk, and a foldable iPad in their backpack, and a Vision Pro on the coffee table at home. Yeah, I don't think so. But I would be much more interested in a foldable iPhone than in a foldable iPad. And maybe that's
So
just
I
because
think I know who.
I haven't figured out the use case for the iPad yet. But
So I think I can figure out who the use for the iPad is. I just don't think it's a regular use case because I work in animation. So I can see a lot of
Fair
artists
enough.
having that with them. They're carrying the biggest iPad they can now just to do, whatever they can do. So I can see it in that regard. I can't see what I would do with it because the current iPad is perfect for what I do for script work and things like that. Fits everything in there perfectly. I don't need it to be bigger. I need it to be exactly what it is, document size, for me to just mark it up documents, side things. And to me, that's a more real world use case, even though I use it in kind of a non-real world use case, than where I see it being useful with artists who, need that bigger real estate.
I probably should use it for more things. Right now, it sits on my desk, and I literally use it for one thing, and that's for telestration. When I'm teaching, that's the only thing I use it for. If I need a screen that big, I go to my MacBook. If I want something portable, I use my iPhone. I don't know. That's just me. Let's talk about the honey scam. So this just broke. I believe it was it earlier this week? Earlier this week, and it broke with a.
You mean last year?
Yeah, sorry, right. Last year, exactly.
Just last year.
Thank you. So this came by a video that was put out, trying to find the original source of it, Megalag, YouTube creator Megalag from New Zealand. He posted this video, it was actually a couple weeks ago, sorry, a video expose bringing what they called the biggest influencer scam of all time. Now, I heard about this because Marques Brownlee was included in this, along with Mr. Beast, who, by the way, Mazel Tov, Mr. Beast, he just got engaged. Did you all see that? There's now going to be a Mrs. Beast, which is very wonderful. Just today, he got engaged. But Marques Brownlee just put out a video on this. So apparently, you may know Honey. Honey was a Google Chrome extension. And you install it, and then it would automatically find coupons when you're checking out, and it would apply those coupons. Fantastic. Honey is owned by PayPal, by the way. So what happened was, apparently Honey did an extraordinarily fantastic job of reaching out to YouTube creators and working the YouTube market. They had thousands and thousands of ad placements and sponsorships with lots of different YouTube creators, including Mr. Beast and Marques Brownlee and some other big ones. But then two things went awry. So some of you may have your own, what's it called? When you, I have if I share an Amazon link, I get a kickback. What's that called?
Affiliate link.
Thank you. Affiliate links. So all of these creators have affiliate links. And in their videos, they plug items, then you go to them and you buy it, and then they get a kickback from their affiliate link. Apparently, when you would use the Honey plugin, because that's the last thing that happens before checkout, it erased all of the affiliate information and replaced it with its own. So Honey was essentially not charging the creators a lot up front for the ad placement, but then stealing on the back end. In addition to that, the other half of the story is that apparently they were making deals with some of these online retailers. And they were saying, tell you what, for a fee, because the retailers, they didn't really like the idea that Honey's just going to give away free coupons to everything. So they would say to the retailers, tell you what, you have a 3% coupon available and you have a 20% coupon available. If you pay us whatever, we'll only make the 3% coupon available in our database. So they're screwing the consumer and they're taking advantage of the creator who are helping them with all of their ads and things like that. So what Marquez said is, clearly, had we known this, we would not have been a participant to this. There is now a class action lawsuit against Honey for let's see. They were acquired by PayPal for $4 billion. And this class action lawsuit, I don't see how much it's for actually. It was filed on December 29th in U.S. District Court. Plaintiffs are seeking damages in excess of $5 million, which is pennies for them. But it's a pretty big scam, pretty big deal. Have you ever used Honey? Any of you?
I think I have used it.
Yeah, I have. I had it installed on my
I think I
browser,
have
too.
used it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's on my browsers now, but I think I have used it in the past.
Hey,
Well, now
Leo,
I don't want to use it.
Are extensions like this available like do they cross the pond? Do you know?
I was going to say I would argue this is the most American story I've ever heard because none of it happens in the rest of the world.
Really?
That feels on brand.
We don't do token coupons like this. It's just not how. It's just different. It's just different. Although affiliate links, yes. I'm sure there's an 80s movie where he just worked out that he was going to get the rounding money in every single check. Well, I'm trying to think. Dave's nodding his head, and it turns out he got like a gazillion billion from doing it because it's such a small amount. Yeah. And actually, that sort of trickle thing does work. No, I don't use the plugins there. In fact, there's been a lot of pushback on some of these plugins, on some of the ways of doing things like this. Funny enough, I'm trying to read some of the stories that you see these days, and you're forever hitting the block. You're having to unblock your blockers these days to get to see things.
Right.
Yeah. But
Dave, have you ever used Honey?
No, I've never used Honey, and I don't make money off the internet. So that's I make money in the real world, and I do things for real people. Don't do it in terms of video or any of that stuff. Shooting it out to people, my ideas. But I have warned a lot of people that I've consulted with that plugin security is somebody's responsibility. Right. And they often think the responsibility ends with handing out a password to a user in a government office, but they don't always control what can be installed on a browser. They can really control what's in the operating system because they check them every day. But they weren't making people aware that the plugin that was automatically done when you just clicked, you didn't know that it put one in our browser, and now you have made the whole department critically unsafe. And if you don't know that, and you didn't even know that by clicking on the little bar, you were actually installing something. You thought you were getting a new page or a new piece of information, but in fact, you installed something. So these guys had to be educated about how the browsers have to have locks that do not allow plugins to be installed. And they're available. You have to your average user doesn't go that deep into the system. But if you go to Chrome and you start typing in security things, you get a whole bunch of pages of what you can do and what you can't, and then what you can modify.
And the truth is that I expect a certain level of this, nonsense and even almost criminal behavior from small little, I don't know, third-party things. But what gets me about this story, which I haven't really heard a lot about, is that they're owned by PayPal. I mean, I use PayPal for invoicing every day for my work.
And an ad broker would deal with PayPal. They would love to deal with PayPal because they do all the hard work. Yeah.
But that's a huge, and I understand that the class action lawsuit is look, clearly they didn't break any laws because it's a $5 million lawsuit.
Yeah.
Right. But it's just, it's scummy. It's really, really scummy. And maybe I'm
with
naive
Leo
about
on
how, the purity of PayPal, but because I've heard some, garbage about them also. But
Oh, yeah.
okay, so we started talking about foldable iPhones, but there's a problem with Siri, apparently. So there's a big payout that's, well, again, big is sort of a relative term, right? So Apple is paying $95 million to settle a Siri privacy lawsuit. So here's how this happened. So, when you say the magic words, as Andy says on Mac Break Weekly, hey Shlomo, because we don't want to set off everyone's phones. So when you say those, it starts listening. But if it was said by accident, or if you were watching TV or you were on Zoom or whatever, and someone said it, apparently Siri started listening and recording. I don't know about recording. Started listening to what you were saying. And then Apple sold that information to third parties, such as advertisers. So it says two plaintiffs said their mentions of Air Jordan. Now, this is the part I don't buy. They said their mentions of Air Jordans and Olive Garden restaurants triggered ads for these products. Another said he got ads for a brand name surgical treatment after discussing it. He thought privately with his doctor. Don't we all feel like our computers are listening to us?
It feels like that's always been our biggest fear, right? That, these devices are going to use our information in the wrong way. But it is strange. I mean, there are times when you're having a conversation, then you're like, how am I getting all these ads for this? A lot of it's coincidence. Yeah. Some of it's not. And I think that's, sorry. I think that's one of the reasons that people have such a difficult time.
Go ahead, Leo.
I think this thought of the things they're listening to you has been quite. I think it's too spooky to feel that it's not happening. That's my.
Well, they're not listening to you. They're cross-connecting your profiles.
Although there was a comment in the chat that they may be not listening to David because they saying you're on the wrong mic again. But,
yeah, I don't know what that's about. And you know what else I don't know?
I don't know. Well,
I'm not getting the.
I don't know, but we'll just say
I get the chat in here, and I'm not getting the chat either. I don't know what's going on.
Okay, so but this listening to you, I think it is. I just feel, although I'm very anti the conspiracy theories of a lot of things, that it just happens too often. And I know, Tamara, you're saying it's coincidence. It's too often. It really is. And I can't tell you if is it Facebook listening to you? Is it something, I think, I mean, maybe you're triggering the thoughts, but there have been many times I've been driving, talking about something, and then the next time I connect on my phone, it's got adverts.
I think
for something that's related.
This is a big problem, I think, it coming from Apple. Because Apple is all about security, and this is saying we have not been as secure as we've been saying we are. And I think that's really a brand problem now for them.
Yeah, but that was what I was going to say. Yeah. Out of all the players in the market, I would be super surprised if. Now, okay, there's two parts that I do agree. The only way that you train human listening devices is to pass them the content. And so consequently, I can understand that they're training and passing things more, and because it's getting so much better. Every single day you use anything where you're doing any sort of conversion from speech into written. It's getting the nuances which it wasn't getting before, etc., etc. So I can understand that that was happening, but to be doing real time to then be passing it over to a ad, that
Right.
just
That's exactly.
everything
That's the
I know of
problem.
Apple,
Right.
of everything I know about
The
Apple,
listening's not a problem.
Right.
The listening's not a problem. It's the idea that they're passing it on to someone else.
Yeah.
That's where the problem is.
Did you, by the way, you just made me think of this, Leo. I don't know if you saw this, that the Chinese AI, a company in China, I'm forgetting the name, designed an AI or built up an AI for like $7 million, much, much cheaper than everyone else, because they trained it on OpenAI. They trained it on another AI. And so they were able to iterate much more quickly. You made me think of it when you said, how listening. And look, I'm convinced that everything is always listening to me, and I'm fine with that. Like I like, if you're going to send me an ad, make it pertinent, make it be about something I just talked about. That's what I want.
You have to be aware of a couple of things. You can actually tell Siri not to do that. It's in the settings. And it's in the settings of Mac OS. It's in iOS. It's do not share what you do with me, Dave.
Right, but why don't I? But I want it to give me that information.
Oh no, you just it's your information. Apple doesn't get it. So they process it on the phone, but they don't leave it in a server somewhere for someone to get it.
Okay.
And it's your choice to ignore that, because it's set by default to allow them to do research for getting Siri to work better. And sometimes it is to their benefit. They also have stopped having real people sort of scan through looking for interesting queries that might make Siri smarter.
They actually had that?
They got in trouble for that.
Doing that?
And yeah, and a lot of, Google does it too. And this was just, work to get it working better. But right now, Siri is not, a privacy issue. It's the payout is because they could not prove that what people had been using Siri for was not recorded and, like you say, shared with other people. It's not really shared with people in the sense that they're making money off it. It's when people are willing to pay to get a database dump. And Facebook does this as well. And Google has a huge market in this as well, where they can put together aggregate information, box it up, and sell it to you as a package. This thing about listening, I've been dealing with quite a lot, because a lot of my family asked me about it. And a lot of other people I work with asked me, why is it that somebody sent me an ad for a telescope? Why would I be interested in a telescope? Well, what they know is that your friend in Red Deer just bought himself a beautiful telescope, and you went and visited him a week ago, and your phone and his phone was in the same proximity. So the record of his purchase is now associated with your association with him. And because you spent a certain amount of time with that person, because they're your friend, you were there all afternoon drinking wine, the phone company knows how long those phones have been together. And that information is associative profiling. And that's been done since day one. I actually had to tell people who were professors not to send birthday greeting cards and Christmas cards that were through a website, because you're just providing people with their phone number, address, and their name and their birth date and other information in the message that you put in these things. And they just didn't believe it. And then they discovered that, after you did that, a whole lot of ads related to you and your friend seemed to come up.
Yeah, and again,
so I would look at anything you think it's listening for. Think back for the last, say, 6 weeks, who you've been associating with and what sort of purchases they've been making, and then you'll see that they got a new car and now you're getting Toyota ads. So.
Okay, hey, I'll just play the flip side for the robots listening to us. There is I have a family friend who has a home that they are renting to a lovely 95-year-old woman who a couple weeks ago fell, and she had an Alexa in her house. Had she just said the magic word, she could have called for help. Now, she didn't realize that, but because she had a device in her home that was listening, and because other people who very often would wear the necklaces or the bracelets, right? The Medi alert, they can now just say, "Hey Shlomo," or "Hey Lexa," or "Hey whatever," and call for help. And Tamara, you've also, you've told the experience of your mom in the car.
That's a great story.
So okay, let's forge ahead. I thank you. I think it's John who's in the chat who's mentioning that for some reason my mic doesn't sound right. I have no idea why, but I'm not really worth listening to anyway. So let's move on.
True.
These other folks here, these are the ones who are worth listening to.
Can I just ask if you've seen my message in chat?
I did see it. Well, you wrote a message saying, anyone else seeing this?
I've got a message at the top of my Zoom window called Live, and it says the content of this meeting is being sent to a third party.
Yes.
There's an information button next to it and an OK button at the end.
Yes.
Is it going to hurt the show if I don't click OK?
It doesn't matter if you click OK.
Okay.
It's just letting you know that Ecamm is capturing your camera. That's all. So we can send it out to the wonderful world of whatever.
All right. So despite whether I gave it permission, it's doing it. Okay.
It has
Exactly.
It's the same as
That's actually
there are.
That's actually fantastic that you just said that, because that's exactly what was happening with Siri, right? Just whether you give her permission or not,
Right.
it's going to
She
do
was
it.
doing
Still
it.
happening.
Yeah, it's still happening. All right.
Okay.
Let's talk about technology and New Year's resolutions. So I think there are two pieces of this that I wanted to sort of talk about today. One is for us, right? What are our New Year's resolutions? What are the technologies that may help us keep our New Year's resolutions? What are the technologies that are designed to specifically help us do this? And how do they work? Second is, what should the New Year's resolutions of technology be for the technology companies, for the CEOs, for the tools that we use? What do we hope that they are going to do in 2025? It's a new year, which means we have opportunities to dream big. So let's go ahead and do that.
Let me start.
Okay, Dave, I'm coming to you. Go for it.
Okay. First New Year's resolution. I don't usually do these. But since we were doing this show and you wanted to talk that way, I have resolved to go a full year without buying anything from office hours. I don't want to have
Good
gas
luck, my
syndrome.
friend.
Gear acquisition is a blight on my life. And I actually have a spreadsheet showing how much I've been spending. And
Don't
I'm
do
thinking
that.
this year I could use that money to travel. So, okay.
There you go. So
My resolution.
if anyone
And
is
an
watching,
obligation of tech CEOs and that is to give me ownership of my data.
okay, so wait a second. Hold on, slow down. So first of all, if anyone's watching who may not know, Office Hours is a community that we're all a part of. And very often we get gear acquisition syndrome, gas, when we see other people talking about the tools that they have or using the tools that they have or telling us that we should be using the tools that they have. And then we end up going to Best Buy or to somewhere else and buying those things. So good on you, Dave, for saying, for 2 days in, saying that you will not. It's a good thing we didn't do the show on the third or fourth day, by which time you may have very well broken that. No.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. But for tech, let's talk more about the second one. You want ownership of your data. How do you not have ownership of your data?
Well, for instance, I give my data to, say, a service that handles my car. And they let me, through that, start, stop, lock my car and do all kinds of fun stuff with the data that's in it. But if another company buys that company, they buy it primarily for the data. They don't buy it for the cars. So I want ownership of that data so that if I had given it for free and you bought a company, then you should give me back my data.
Okay. So
Or dominion over it.
Are you thinking about like the Googles that give us Gmail and that give us these free services and then use our data as payment for those services?
That's right. I'm okay with sharing it and giving it, but if it moves to another company that I'm not agreeing with, a company that may be perpetrating bad things with human trafficking or whatever, I've got no control over my friend's service selling that data to another third.
Okay. So you're okay giving your data to a service that is providing you with something of value because you enter into an agreement, as it were, with that service. But if they fold and they move on, they don't have the right to sell or pass along your data. That's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm getting at.
That seems fair.
I hope it happens.
And it does have that happens often. Is that?
Oh, takeovers and ownership? Yeah.
Well, no, that
Apple
I know,
just bought
but
Pixelmator.
But the data.
Apple bought Pixelmator, right? And the data that I use in Pixelmator that they might have is different than the data I have for, say, Adobe.
And is it when Apple buys Pixelmator, are they not also?
Do they have a right to have that data?
Well,
from
but the way
Pixelmator?
I was going to phrase it is, are they not also buying that data?
That's what they're doing, yeah.
And-
but it's not their data, it's mine.
Okay.
How do we control that? I'm so
Yeah, how do we
intrigued by this 'cause
control
I
that?
love the idea of it. How do we control
Well,
that?
it
Because
would be a
I guarantee
legislative
my-
decision, right?
We don't know where our data is going as it is now. Like, I mean, I'm
That's right.
assuming once I signed up for anything that it's going to go everywhere, right? I also love unlocking and locking my car from my phone. So I'm not willing to not use that. But is that the only way I can control that, is to just say I'm not going to use those services? Is that what you're saying? Or is it?
No, I'm saying that you need to reestablish my permission every time it transfers
I love
from
that
one owner
idea of
to the other.
reestablishing
Yeah.
permission for sure.
And it should be a law that says you have to get everybody to say, I agree. If someone has and the next time I log in to Pixelmator, it says Apple is our new owner and they need your permission. And then I get to say, I'm not in agreement with this new company, Apple. I liked Pixelmator. And so I'm going to say.
So John Snyder is in the chat, and he says 23andMe is a good example. They have genetic data for millions of customers and are likely to sell it in bankruptcy. Most people don't know that will happen, and it's up to users to pull it out. Okay, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope that is a precedent. Which
First of all,
set
is 23andMe
where-
going into bankruptcy?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's
That's
been
what
at
I'd
it for
heard.
about 6 months. They've been restructuring for about 6 months.
I didn't know that. I apologize.
Oh,
for
you're
my
not following
ignorance on
that. Okay.
Wow.
All right. No, that's okay.
I mean, that's.
That's the deepest data. Now the
I was
insurance
just going. I mean,
company, same
that's a
story,
whole different
right?
level of.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And the retailers, they know my size, they know my color choices, they know that sort of stuff. And if they get merged with Macy's, well, then I don't want Macy's to have that info because I don't deal with Macy's.
Huh.
Give it some more thought. We
Okay,
don't
thank
have to
you
stop
guys
the
for
show
sharing.
for it.
Can I look at this
Go,
in a slightly
Leo.
different way? I'm not.
Yep.
I'm not. Dave, I'm not disagreeing with any of your comments or your thoughts of how. However,
It's a
let's look at
resolution.
it
It's a
from-
wish. You know.
Okay, all right. Let's look at it historically. We, a lot of what we deal with in the world is we look at historical data. So we look at historical data from newspapers. We look at information that was created and captured from photography from as far as we can go back. There is, if you call this data, we teach using this data. We learn using this data. This is, everything comes from that information. In the past, you could argue that data wasn't as rich as we'd like it. In fact, we spend time trying to recreate and trying to enhance that data that we have. And now we're at the point when we're going, well, we've got more data, and now what we're saying is we don't want to. Are we shutting off future generations' learning experiences because of our own personal needs? Now, I do agree with you about the anonymization of that data is critical. That's the critical element. But we wouldn't learn about how to fight viruses or how to look after, how to deal with cancer, how to deal with all these things if we do not use the data that we've had in the past. And now we're getting to the point where people are saying, well, I don't want my data, so then we won't learn about your cancer and how to deal with it for future generations. So you've got to be careful about some of the
distinguish.
things that you say you want to cut, because by cutting what you think is yours, you actually are diminishing the world.
That's correct. But at the same time, I get some control over who gets it. I am subscribing to a newspaper. I give them my information, so I get the newspaper. And that is a relationship I have with them. And if they take that and sell it without contacting me, I have a right to say, hey, I'm not buying a newspaper anymore. So
absolutely.
that sort of thing.
But Dave,
my data is withdrawn.
No, but wait a second. you of course you have the right to say that I'm not buying your newspaper anymore. The question that I think we're all asking and that you've raised is how do we say to them, you can't sell that data? It's not yours. I mean, we can punish them by not purchasing from them anymore, of course. But once 23andMe goes,
but we can also
bankrupt
look at
and
this
sells-
another way round. Well, another example of something is that because we've just we've just gone to a new year, so copyrights change. So if I am right, am I right? Popeye is no longer copyrighted.
Yeah, I heard about that.
That's
No,
right.
it's not copyrighted.
Yeah.
Anything from
common-
29 on.
Yeah.
So it shows, so in other words, Dave, are you willing to say that you want that data to be held, or should we have the equivalent of time stamping your data as we do with copyrights to say that they go and then say at this
That's
point
interesting.
it's now no longer
right.
relevant to me personally, but it's part of the world's data.
Right.
So that's it. Should there be something
It's
like
now
that?
historical data, not current data, and I'm
Right.
for that
Correct.
too.
Is
That there is
yeah.
my body. I said this about 25 years ago when somebody asked me, how much would you charge if we were to scan your entire body and keep a model of you? And I said $250,000. And then lately it's been $500,000 because the value of my age group is higher to sell things to than it was 20 years ago. So I believe that if I were to merchandise myself that way, and there is a guy in I think he's in Korea who's offering stock in him. You can tell him what to do with his life, and you get the monetary benefit of whatever success he has. And he is a serf in that sense. He's selling himself. I think we're doing this without realizing it, and we never stop to ask, what is the phone company doing with my location data? What are they doing? Are they making better sales signals? No, they're packaging it up and putting a profile together to sell me ads for areas I go to. So if I went to the drugstore today, which I did, to look up a prescription, they know I did that. And they could give it to a pharmaceutical company who they know will pay good money for it. And when I got cards for the shopping, my basic Safeway card that has lots of personal information on it of who I am and what my fees are, and I keep tapping the machine with that, they're sharing that because they make millions off this data because they have hundreds of thousands of people a day going through their stores. So I don't mind that they're doing that because I agreed to it when I picked up a card and said I'll use it. But it took me a very long time not to use a credit card that had the little 4-digit code on it because I wanted to be able to change the code, and they couldn't do it when they first came out. It took about 5 years before they allowed you to change your PIN. Then you can go into your bank and have your PIN changed. Then I was ready. Okay, now I've got control of the information and I can carry on. So I give people permission to have my data. That's okay. But I wanted to go back to the historical thing, like data as good information to do research with. I'm not suggesting anything in the newspaper is data about Dave, unless Dave was the headline or part of the news. And then I'm a public figure and I have to admit that anything I do in public is news or their business. But if I'm doing it in private, and I'm sitting here in my house right now, what's private between us right here, that should stay here. And if it were to go somewhere else, can you either give me a piece of the action, which I have proposed many times in essays about how the government would make more money authenticating data from its citizens for big data companies like insurance and huge corporations. They need the correct data. And we all know what happens when that data fails. My credit score had the wrong birth date for me. And I lost all purchasing power in the US until that was fixed. I could not buy anything from the US. I could use it in Japan, but I couldn't use it in the US because what's the credit company? They had a big breach. Anyway, now that it's fixed, I'm able to do it again. But they got it wrong, and it's been right for decades and decades. So somebody has to authenticate this data, make sure it's Dave's, and make sure that it has some monetary value that is tradable, and then the market will settle down, and these mergers and that for data purposes will stop.
By the way, authentication, I think, is a whole other thing that would be really interesting to think about. like biometric authentication,
Mm-hmm.
fingerprint, eye scanning. That's because I mean we've gone through so many changes in that. That would be something that's really interesting. Tamara, I'm gonna pick on you for a moment.
Well, here's my
Okay.
thumbprint for your benefit. There's my
Thank you very
thumbprint. You
much.
can use that anytime you like. You guys are permitted to use this thumbprint wherever you find it.
Thank you. So Tamara, what is
Yeah.
Pomatama?
Pomodoro tracker, my little friend. So the Pomodoro tracker is basically uses the Pomodoro method, and the Pomodoro method takes a kitchen timer or any kind of timer that you have, and you work for 25 minutes solid on whatever you're working on, and then you get a 5-minute break, and then you do that 4 times, and you get a longer break. So it's a way of tracking information, and I love this. It's not even an app; it is a website, and it is so simple. And if you actually sign up for it, which is free, again, you're giving, now it's not, you're giving people data, but but it's pretty amazing because you can kind of put your to-do list in, you can do categories. You can actually, if you go up to that little the little settings wheel at the top in the corner, you can change everything and you can add extra things. So I actually have a timer that is the 25 minutes, but I also have a tiny tomato timer that is 2.5 minutes. I use this a lot with writers who are struggling to figure out, struggling to get started. And that's how I started with it, is because I was looking for things for writers that I work with to just like, let's start, let's get something down on paper so you can get over whatever the hump is. But what it is really incredible for is you can start adding your to-do list into it, and it's blocked off in 25-minute increments, and you can see very quickly how the 150 things you have on your list are simply not possible in the given time of however what a day is. So if you add a couple of, just add something into that, and then press enter, and you can add something else. You can move all of those around from place to place. You can see at the end, you're like, hey, it's not going to take me 25 minutes. It's going to take me 3 or 4 times. So you can click that number 1 and it'll become a number 2 or a number 10 or a number whatever.
Wait, what is the number 2 and the number 10?
So it'll give you 2 Pomodoros to do it. So if you look at the, I think it's at
look
the
up here.
top,
You can see
it's telling you how long and what time you'll be finished if you were starting to do your Pomodoros, which I think is super helpful because we all kind of overestimate what the amount of time it's actually going to take to complete a task. And so we get into something, we're like, how did I lose like 17 hours? That's how. So it's a really great focus task. It's super simple, and it's not that entertaining to look at. So it's good to kind of block everything else out. And it's pretty easy to say, okay, well, I can't really start a big project, but I'm going to do, 25 minutes. A lot of times what I'll find is I'll be like, okay, I'm going to check my email. I'm going to do, instead of checking my email throughout the day, which takes up so much time, I may say, I'm going to do a Pomodoro at the end of the day or 3 times a day. And I can set that schedule up for myself. And so I find especially when I'm losing focus and I'm doing too many things, this is a great website to kind of just make it simple, super clear, and it remembers all of my things. I have different categories set up. So if it's personal, if it's work, I can add, different shows if I'm working on different shows. I can add in as many categories as I want. If I need to take a break, I can take a break. After that 25 minutes, it turns green for 5 minutes to go. It gives you a 5-minute break, and then it get you physically started again. So it's just a lot of control, but it's a really nice way of focus. If you just need if you just need time to focus, I love this website for that.
Is this sort of like a to-do list for you also?
It is a to-do list. So I don't keep this because once it's complete, it disappears. Now okay. You can set it up to send you an email to tell you all the things you completed, which is super satisfying. Especially if you're in a week where you're like, oh, I've not done anything. It'll tell you all of the time that you spent doing things and what you did. But it's actually like the simplicity of it is amazing. I actually don't use this as my final to-do list. As much as I love technology, I have found that I do much better thinking first on paper. So I have an old-fashioned planner and to-do list. But then when I really want to take that and be like, okay, now I'm going to focus on these, or I'm going to just do a reality check about how much time, if I were only going to give it 25 minutes, how much time would it really take to do that? And so sometimes I'll group things in the same 25 minutes. If you finish with a task, you can click that it's finished. Even if the 25 minutes isn't finished, your next task will start. So you can kind of just work through, and you just know you're working in 25-minute blocks, and it'll tell you all the things you accomplished in that time. So for me, I definitely use it when I'm just overwhelmed and there's so much going on. It's such a great way to just go, okay, I can start something. 25 minutes, I can definitely do 25 minutes. And it could be for anything. It could be reading, it could be personal stuff. I had it on there, pick up the groceries, because I was trying to figure out, like, when am I going to go pick up the groceries in this long list of things I have to do today? And it just really helps kind of, what I found, and what the writers that I work with have found, is that after you use it, after a while, it really helps you get a sense of how long it takes to do things. Because we all think we can do everything, and it turns out can't.
Tamara's just reminded me I haven't checked my email in 6 hours. I'll be right back.
We'll
it's
see
funny.
you in 6 hours.
I've looked at some of those tools that tell you that, to only check your email this many times or whatever. I cannot go on to the next activity in my day until I have zero inbox. I just can't. And God forbid I would go to sleep at night with anything in my, if something's in my inbox, it means I have to take action on it. That's just the way it works for me. And my calendar is my to-do list. Everything that needs to get done during the day, I give it a time in my calendar. And if I don't do it at that time, I move it to a different time. And because that's the only way I'm able to keep up with stuff. Tamara, if you got to make a New Year's resolution for some of our tech leadership or tech companies, anything that you would wish for this coming year?
Oh, goodness. I don't know.
All right, I'm going to come back to you. Think about that.
Yeah, come back to me.
All right, I'm putting you on the spot again. Leo, who's still awake, but barely.
I am still awake, although I seem to have suddenly my internet went unstable. But hopefully,
did it really? No, you look good. You look and sound fine.
Yeah, there you go.
So any tools or technologies that you find particularly helpful, or do you not buy into the whole New Year's resolution?
Okay, so
thing?
I did a New Year's. I don't actually do New Year's resolutions, but there's something I did a number of years ago that was, I wanted to look at the problem that some of what Tamara was talking about and how to solve it for myself. And the thing that I did, and it worked, and I've kept it, and that was that the first thing I did when I moved PCs or moved Macs is I turn off the notifications, particularly for email. And I have found that having all those notifications off frees up the time that you are wasted seeing continually. And I see it when I watch people and I'm on somebody's PC and they're asking me for some help or something, and I can see all they do is just every time that thing flashes, that's all they do. Their world ends, it starts again. The world ends, it starts again. And it's like you are breaking your life. I used to, and I'm thinking about doing this, I used to keep my mobile phone downstairs. Cell phone, sorry, I'll translate.
At night,
from one language to another. Yeah, I kept it downstairs. The
That I can't do. I tried.
Sleep cycle change is enormous.
Yeah.
Absolutely enormous. And actually,
but don't you need your phone to track your sleep cycle?
Oh, he's touched a nerve here, hasn't he? Yes.
Yeah, you have your watch tracks your sleep.
It is. There are things there are definitely. The one I'm looking at, a very good friend of mine, and David knows as well, Leah, she has an app on her phone. Every time she hits Facebook on her phone, it puts a 20-second timeout. So she can't get into Facebook for 20 seconds. And she said eventually she stops hitting it. Otherwise, you're just like, bang, whatever the app is that you always hit when you go into your brain goes into the, I need the endorphins or whatever they're called, and you keep hitting it. She's put it on there, and I am looking at that because I think that's something
Mm.
you know that you're addicted to these things. One of the things I've written. Sorry.
No, I said I did take those things off of my phone. Like I did clear my phone of
Yeah, you took off.
certain
Yeah,
apps. Like Facebook
yeah.
is
I
not
think
on my phone.
okay, and I think one of the things that I have this discussion, people talk about their addictions. They say, and the reality is, I think everybody has addictive personality. It's not a single person's trait. Everybody is addicted to things because we were actually almost taught to be addicted to things because at school we were told to get better and better and better at something. So what we actually aim to do is get better at something, and by getting better at something you become addicted to doing it. So you take a sports person and they are actually, you look at something like, I would say in the UK, Andy Murray, and you say he's addicted to tennis. Now you may say that's a good addiction, but it's still an addiction because he's doing it to a level
He's made
that
it a
you want to do.
lifestyle, yeah.
Exactly. So you've got to sit there and look at those things that you're doing, and you're saying, actually, I think a lot of people are addicted to email. It may be a generational thing, because actually trying to send an email to people of a certain generation, you're like, my kids, it's like, I sent you an email when? About 2 weeks ago about this. This is now the third time I'm going to have to send the email to reset the whatever it is to get in because you have ignored it for 3 times. You seem to know the one to get when Netflix asks you for the code. You seem to know to ask me that instantly. But anything else, it's like, no, not on my list, not on my list. But I think we've got to look at these things. And I know that the one in particular, email, taking off the notifications, so my PC does not ping, it does not come up on the right hand corner. I'm on a Mac now, it doesn't do any of those things, it doesn't show me the messages. I have to think and go, oh, I haven't checked my email.
You know what?
And when you do that, you get the time back.
I ran into a problem. It's interesting you say that because I did not realize that I wanted my computers to be on Do Not Disturb. Right? I didn't want the dinging and the pinging on my computers, but I do want my phone to, because I can ignore my phone. I'm fine ignoring my phone, but I did not pay attention, and so I remember setting up what Apple calls focus and Do Not Disturb. But then there is a little thing in here that says, where is it? That syncs it across all of your devices, and I did that and I wasn't getting anything. And so I had to go in and actually turn, whatever. It wasn't as intuitive as I wanted it to be. I want to, and maybe this goes back a little bit, Dave, to what you were talking about ownership, but control. To me, control of technology is absolutely vital. I want to be able to say, this is what I want. This is when I want it. This is how I want it. And if that introduces a little bit of complexity, I'm okay with that. You can allow people to turn that on or off, turn the complexity on or off. I think Alex has actually talked about, give me a sort of a complex versus a simple switch. I would like the complex one, please, so that I can really get things to work the way I want them to work.
I would like to reinforce Leo's bit about sleep. And that is that I've been an advocate of long-term sleep since I read Sleep Thieves about 25, 30 years ago. And that research proved that when today daylight saving time leaps ahead in Canada, there's a 7% rise in fatal car accidents. And the only proof he had is that when you get to October and they take it back an hour, there's a 7% drop in fatal car accidents. And this PhD was given out to this psychology professor in BC who did that. And it made sense when he studied sleep debt, which is where you're short an hour for a week, and after a week you've got a day's sleep that you've missed. And this is something like we think we're sleeping, but we may not be, and this is part of the problem. I'd like to also say that Leo's right about the addiction thing, because if you become aware of yourself wholly and not a slave to other things telling you who you are or other people, you get to know where your addictions are. I know I have an addiction to a couple of things. It's not gear. I know I have to be very careful about gambling because I can be addicted to gambling, and I'm so aware of it that now I can volunteer in casinos and not feel like going out to the tables. So I have chosen to take responsibility for that particular addiction. I also know that my father had it. So, we have something in common. It might be genetic. But this is a thing that I think Leo's pointing out, is that if we become attached to our devices and what they can do for us, we tend to forget it's a relationship, and you have to take part in that relationship. You're giving it your life, and you can take it back.
Yeah. Right. Owning our devices and using our devices and our technologies rather than them owning and using us. And
Yeah, and I think the
I don't
thing
worry
too-
too much. I'll be honest with you. Just real quickly, I just want to say that I think that everything happens in swings, and I think it's entirely possible that we are now on the side of the swing where technology is kind of controlling us a little bit. I don't worry too much about
We'll
that.
learn and adapt.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because I think it
But
will
I
swing
think
back.
there's-
Yeah. Let me just get
there's
Leo
some
in. I'm
things that
sorry.
we can
real
do.
quick, Tamara, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah.
No, I mean the problem with the tech when you focus everything in a technology environment and you turn around and you say, how does the technology help me? How does the technology hinder? As Dave was talking about, you have to look at the technology as an enabler to you, and then realize who you are in that relationship, and how is I ran my own company for many years, and in that company, it was a technology company. We were doing sports websites for big governing bodies, but the reality is what ended up happening is that the customers knew that they could get hold of me 24/7. Now that was great at the beginning when you said, hey, I'm available 24/7. And then you realize that you are actually, with the technology, enabling to be available 24/7. So one of the good examples of this, the company used Slack, and actually Slack's very, very invasive. There is literally, it's there,
Really?
it's all the time. Yes.
Because I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
We use Slack in my business, and people complain all the time that they don't get any notifications from Slack. So it's really interesting to hear you say that.
It depends how you use it and the immediacy of what you need to be dealing with. And all of a sudden you get to the point when people will be contacting you about things that they may perceive are important, but you then sit there in the bigger scheme and you go, you've used up all of your lives. You've used up all of the cry wolf lives of telling me this is on fire, this is on fire, this is on fire, this is on fire. And you're like going, actually, I'm now, if I look back at it, you go, none of those were real fires. But the problem is every single one of those raised my blood pressure. Every single one of those raised my speed alert. And you're getting to the point when there is a real fire, you've lost that momentum.
Right, they've cried wolf.
But I think exactly. But the thing that you end up finding is with technology, we all started it. It was like, oh, it's amazing. Look, I can talk to somebody. I can do this that I couldn't do in the past. I can be in communication. But you become addicted to that level of communication and you've got to try and pull it back. So my point is you can and you should look at your technology use, particularly about your downtime and your downtime, wherever that happens to be, and sit there and go, you shouldn't be using the technology. Now, from my world, and David will sort of, he's smiling, he probably knows where I'm going with this one. I think where it hit home was I was in Temple on a Saturday and I'm like sitting there going, I need to check my phone. And you're going, I shouldn't be, it's got that point when it's gone too far.
Where's your mind? Yes. Yeah.
Where your mind is not in the room and focusing, looking at your tomatoes as as you're doing, as Tamara's doing. You're like going, that it's how do you sit there and go, this isn't good. So you've turned technology to enable things, but then you turn it so far that it actually, as you just said, it controls the enable. And that's where I think we've all got to look at it and say, how do I use that technology in my life? But how do I not actually completely walk away from my responsibility, which is
After
me?
Tamara, I'd like to say something
Yeah.
about that too.
Go ahead, Tamara.
I think one of the things that, because I've been looking at technology addiction, I've been reading Irresistible by Adam Alter, which is life-changing. Everyone should listen to it. But what I found is that it was really, my initial reaction was exactly what you said, David. I'm like, but I love getting notifications about messages. I need to hear what the mail is. What if I miss something? What I realized is it did take me a step back to go, what is causing you to take away time? Half of the notifications are things like, here's a sale at Macy's. You know what? I actually do not need text messages from Macy's. At some point, for some reason, I enabled that. Now I've enabled that for way too many people for whatever reason along the way. And a lot of the noise that is coming into my, through technology is all stuff that I actually don't care about. And if I could just get that time back from even a glance at something that is like trying to sell me something, or something that is just popping up that I don't care about. And I think that's what I'm trying to be more intentional about now, is like, what technology do I want to take my time? And if I'm going to be on, Facebook or TikTok, social media, like, what can I do that on my walk? Can I do that in a way that isn't stopping everything to take that time? Or can there be limits on that, where it's like, great, you get a Pomodoro to, be on technology. But I think it has to be intentional. And I think it's not even taking everything away. It's not even taking the things that are important away. It's literally taking the things that are unimportant away. And I think we have a lot of stuff flying at us, a day, that there's a lot that can be taken away. And even email, when I say I'm going to check email at 10 and 1 and this, I may glance at it, but I'm not going to do anything with it until that time. It took everything in my power not to do anything. But after a while, I was like, you know what? People can wait an hour for me to get back to them. They don't need to get back. That's not even a priority. It's not a priority for them. And I'm going to treat it like a priority. So I think it is just being more intentional about how we use technology and what we decide that we want to take our attention away. And there's a lot of stuff, like even the news app, I'm realizing I don't actually need that to be a notification. That for sure can be silenced. The news is, very rarely do I need to have it that rapidly. There's enough people in my life where if something really major happened, they would tell me. So, I think that's what it is for me.
Yeah. Dave, go ahead.
Well, I just came across this actually this morning, and I needed to share it with you guys. But it's a guy named Billy Hume. He's a musician, producer, engineer. He has a YouTube channel called Freaking Out with Billy Hume. And today he was freaking out about why analog audio recording was better than digital. But everybody argues about the sound. And his thing was, it's not about the sound. And I thought, oh, what argument is he going to make? And the argument he makes is the time it took to rewind a reel and change the tape gave the musicians time to pause, think, and concentrate on what they were doing. When he went into digital, and he was a very early adopter in that area, he found himself deleting. Like, oh, that takes no good. Delete. Let's try it again. Delete. Try it again. And it became this mechanism. And all of the passion of what the person was doing was homogenized. And he went back to taking breaks and forcing musicians to just stop and rest your voice, rest your fingers, go out and walk in the garden, go pet the cat for a while, and then come back into the studio and we'll go after it again. But in the old days, it took a long time to wait for a big reel to be put on and another one to change, or for some microphone to be moved or changed. And guys got a lot of breaks, and they got a chance to talk to each other in the band about what they're going to change and how it's going to be done. And he talked about it as being commitment. And I think he's right. If you're a musician, an artist in any field, an artist in visual arts has to be committed. And if it became digitized, you're not committed anymore. And the guys who are using Mid-Journey to be able to put backgrounds behind the text they're trying to sell you, no commitment, no art, no innovation. Because
I think this is absolutely. I think there is. If you look at time capsuling, if you said, what am I going to put in a time capsule that is going to be here, that's going to be a representative of something that somebody will look at in the future? Obviously, there's tons and tons of things that are not that quality. The quality level, when you're talking about music, I always go back to Supertramp and I listen to Supertramp and I sit there and I go, how did they produce this music using the equipment that they had in comparison to somebody just pressing 3 buttons and going go in today? And you're like, you can hear, you feel that amount of effort that you put in. And, you know, the whole point is it's also about focus and concentration. And this is the problem, I think, with some of the technology. It's really easy to get mediocre at the moment. And it's really easy. You can just do mediocre. I mean, just look at me. I'm doing mediocre with one camera. But the point is to do good. And that's where people are not seeing it, is to do really well. And you do need to put that effort in. And the problem is that effort is being lost because of time things, which Tamara has talked about. You know, there's just a billion things pulling our time away. And it means that we end up doing mediocre. And you have to look at how technology can be used. And, I get a bit also, we've talked about it on this show about AI, and people talk about AI. To me, AI is enabling. It's just another way of enabling to get some of that level up. But the good stuff will always be that one thing above it. And it's just making sure that you're spending your time using your technology so that you become better at something.
Right. And it seems to me
mediocre.
And I think, Leo, that I could spend 20 minutes writing something from scratch, or I could spend 20 minutes enhancing and enriching and personalizing something that ChatGPT gave me, and that's going to be so much better 9 times out of 10 than something that I do on my own. There was a conversation happening on JedLab, which is an online Jewish educators forum. Someone had complained about that some of her teachers wrote their comments using ChatGPT. It was obvious. And, and her question was, how do we teach our teachers that that's not acceptable? To which I wrote back, I think it's absolutely acceptable. In fact, I wrote a custom GPT for my teachers to use. I want them to use it because honestly, half of my teachers, their English is broken, and because they're Latin or they're Israeli, and they need to communicate with an American audience. So I want them to use these tools, but again, for them to use the tools, not for the tools to use them. So they can start with that tool, and then they have to make it better. They have to put that same time in, but also make it better.
There's been, I used to write report card comments, and then they would have like report card comment books, because that is a time consuming task. Absolutely. And what you really want from me is for me to be noticing and being with your child. That's where you really get the best out of me. So if I agree, if you have a teaching staff who needs help, assistance writing teacher comments have been integrated into technology for a long time, exactly for that reason. Right. Because you don't want your teachers spending all of their time crafting the most amazing comment. You want them crafting the best experience and the best learning environment for your child. That period. Full stop.
Well, right, and just
for me,
go ahead.
There wasn't actually much, because on my teachers' comments it was, Leo could try harder if he concentrated. So they haven't changed much in all of my comments for a long time.
Yeah, Leo is now my new best friend. You know that because we're both Supertramp fans, and that was what I discovered today about Leo.
And the other thing I would say, the thing I always think of AI, this is the way I look at it, as AI is a sous chef. AI is that thing that does all the chopping and preparing. Yeah. If you make AI make the meal and there's no input, it's not going to be anything spectacular. It's going to be okay. You're not going to die of malnutrition, but it'll pizza. It'll be Domino's pizza, but it will not be good pizza. But it's a really good tool as a sous chef to make sure that you're not spending. Why do you need to spend 9 hours cutting onions? Yeah, that's not. Right. Yeah, the world has moved on.
Someone sent me a list today of days of the past week, and then on what days which teacher worked and for what hours, and what I needed to translate that into. Just give me by teacher, not by day. So I copied what they sent me, threw it into ChatGPT, and it gave me, and I told them exactly, and it gave it back to me. And it saved me 5 to 6 minutes
that's
of time.
amazing.
You
And
created a pivot table.
right.
Right.
And, and so, yeah, we're in agreement. But so to turn this into a New Year's resolution, I would say, let's resolve to not give up on creating, on the creator economy, right? So we talk about the fact that we're in a creator economy. Let's not give that up. Let's continue to be the creative human beings that we were put here to be. Let's use technology to help us be more creative, not give over that power to let it be the creative force for us. All right, real quick, Leo or Tamara, anything that we want to ask as a New Year's resolution for the big tech companies or for tools, specific tools? I have one. I'll just say Google.
Go for it.
If you're listening, I would like you to make it easier, please, for me to have multiple accounts. And actually, Zoom also. Everyone, I'd like you to make it easier for me to be able to have multiple accounts and switch in and out of things. That would be nice. And like to know that I have multiple, like if I have one account over here, I'd like you to know that this account also belongs to this, and just let me work it all together, please. That's
Linkages.
What
Yeah.
yes, that's what
Linkages.
Tamara or Leo, anything?
I want there to be continued transparency on things. Like I know we've been really working in California, passed some major laws on how you can't use an actor's voice without their permission, and you can't use a dead actor's voice without their estate's permission. Like that, these are the areas that we're kind of treading into, and I think that more of that has to happen. We have to have some kind of clarity on. I think a lot of what we've talked about today is we just don't know. Like we don't know what's being done with our data, and I feel like we need to have more information about that. I know there's even from now to like 5 years ago, we have a lot more information, but that has to continue to be really clear, really dumbed down in a way that just the average person can understand, not in legal speak, so that we really understand where that control is, and how to use things has to become easier, because I think there's a lot of stuff that we have where we're not using to its fullest because we just don't know how to do that, because we don't even send instructions with anything anymore. You just kind of have to figure it out. So I would like technology companies to double down on explaining not just their great qualities to the people who care, but also making it accessible to everybody.
Love it. Leo, it is 3:15 in the morning for you. I'm giving you the last word.
Yeah, I was going to say, when we talk about sleep deprivation, it is 3:15 in the morning. I want to get rid of the dumpster fire called Anonymous. I don't want any service. I want there to be, I just don't want the ability for people to post anonymous. And if they post anonymous, I don't want it in my feeds ever. Wow. I have never seen a single reason for somebody to hide and post anonymous stuff. It's just to me, it's the evil that's created so many problems. Because
you haven't heard the whistleblower
from fake
excuse?
Reviews. Sorry?
Have you heard the whistleblower excuse?
I'm sorry.
You want to blow the whistle on somebody and you want to be anonymous.
So you know what?
That's
I'm actually
case.
I'm putting that's another wonderful topic to talk about anonymity.
The whole validating who you are and saying you are and you are, and then in the same in Facebook, in YouTube, in Google, in your reports that you write, I think everything should have the ability. If it goes out, in your point, Dave, and maybe we'll cover, this sounds like it's going to be a subject.
Yeah, it's going to have to be. Ken Jordan, by the way, is watching. He agrees with you 100%. Yeah.
It's the killer. It's the killer. And there are some sites that you're just going, why on earth? This is just clickbait because it's anonymous.
That's fascinating, because I mean, I standing on one foot, I can think of a few reasons why anonymity could be really important. But let's save that that's an amazing discussion.
And you're also stealing Ken's time as well, because it's the middle of the night for him as well.
Oh, dear Lord. All right. I just want all of you to go to sleep now. But before you go to sleep, I want to thank you. Leo, so much for being here. I love seeing you. It's good to see you here. Dave, I'm so grateful for your time. It's wonderful having you every week. And Tamara, my beloved, thank you so much for being one of my partners in this wonderful little experience that we're doing here. And thank all of you for watching. I appreciate you so much. Please keep sending those comments in. If you ever want to join us on the panel, just drop me a note over in Discord. Go to therundown.show. And I hope you have a fantastic week and that you keep all of your New Year's resolutions, at least until next Thursday at 9 p.m. when we talk about something else. Bye, everyone.